let's talk a little bit about insulin. So let's put this piece up on the screen from Politico. So they say breaking as we flagged might happen back in November of last year. Democrats just learned the Senate parliamentarian nixed their plan to penalize drug companies who hike prices faster than inflation outside of Medicare. So they're allowed to, and again, like they could just fire the parliamentarian and do what they want, but they have decided to be constrained by whatever this random person says. So what they've decided is Medicare, yes, you can negotiate drug prices, but they're not going to allow them when it comes to private companies and the costs that they are charging consumers. They can't do anything about that. So part of that is Democrats really wanted to put a cap on the amount that companies could charge for insulin. And obviously, this is a critical piece because if you just look at the numbers, Americans pay almost $100 for insulin when the rest of the OECD pays significantly less than $25. This takes like it's such a small cost to manufacture insulin. And Bernie Sanders has made a big show of going across the border to Canada to purchase it. I mean, we are just getting price gouged to high heaven. And obviously, we have a lot of people in this country whose life depends on being able to get access to insulin who are diabetic. And so this is a major, major pain point. So they decided, even though the parliamentarian struck it down, they decided to put it up for a vote to see if they could get a few Republicans on board, 10 Republicans on board, so that they could actually overcome the 60-vote threshold and be able to get the insulin cap through, which would be a massive, beneficial step forward for so many people across the country. Well, that didn't work out. Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen. Senate Republicans block the insulin cap on the private market. 60-vote threshold, it fell 57 to 43. So you did have some Republicans who voted for it, specifically just to give credit to the ones who did vote to impose this insulin cap. You've got Bill Cassidy, Susan Collins, Josh Hawley, Cindy Hyde-Smith, John Kennedy, Lisa Murkowski, and Dan Sullivan. Kind of an interesting and odd grouping there, unusual coalition of folks who voted for this insulin cap. And it is worth pointing out, Saagar, two things. Number one, so many of these senators, I saw Joni Ernst in particular, who I think has close family members who are diabetic and depend on insulin, who under the Trump administration, they were talking, we got to get insulin costs there, we got to do this, we got to do that. Then when they have the opportunity to, of course, they vote no. And the other thing that's worth pointing out is that, it's disproportionately red states who have the largest number of diabetic sufferers who, would really benefit from this bill. You can go ahead and put this last piece up on the screen that has the rates here. The highest rate of diabetes is West Virginia, then Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, South Carolina, Arkansas, Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Texas. Many of those places, their senators just voted against this. So again, silly. The Democrats are letting the parliamentarian dictate the rules here, but they've decided to go down this path and ultimately did, I think, something that was at least politically intelligent. The right moral stance would be just to do it and get a new parliamentarian. But from a political perspective, getting people on the record and showing where everybody stands on these issues, I think is a tactic we've seen increasingly from Democrats, and I think it's a pretty wise one.
Well, especially insulin. Also, just don't forget, given that so many Republicans voted for it, that means a lot of Democrats did not vote to make sure that it actually got across the line, which is kind of insane that they didn't allow it to do so. I just think look, this is a good opportunity in order to highlight this. 10% of the U.S. population, 9.8 specifically, of adults over 18 have a diagnosed case of diabetes. And a lot more people, we don't have the exact numbers, are at risk of diabetes. So this is a killer. I mean, this is a sign of the obesity crisis. Diabetes is a lifelong problem. It reflects a lot of problems we have downstream of our diet and more.
Yeah.
I hope it's a wake-up call for some people in order to take care of their health. But at the very least, at this point, we're in it now. And from this point forward, the obesity rate and the morbidly obesity rate only continues to go higher. The correlation between the two is just extraordinary. We have children now getting diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So listen, we have to attack the health crisis. We also have to cure sick people, or at least give people the ability in order to pay for the, I mean, if you're a child and you're like 12 years old, you have type 2 diabetes, like you're signing up for what, possibly a 70-year lifespan. We're going to need this medication. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're going to have to spend here. And it's ridiculous that only Medicare, which is, yes, it's great that Medicare gets a price cap. But what about everybody else? Not all of us have Medicare.
Right.
You know, I'm 30 years old. Like, there's a lot of people like me for 35 years until you ever get to hit that. So what if you get diagnosed with diabetes in your mid-40s, which is increasingly happening to a lot of people, specifically obese people? They're on the hook for years and years. It's just terrible. And, you know, the red state thing, it's a classic situation, right? Which is screwing over your own constituents. But unfortunately, a lot of people are just not going to cover the bill. We've spent almost 30 minutes now this morning, Krystal. It takes a while to be like, yeah, here's how the tax code works. Private equity, you get carved out. Here's why it matters. Same with the exact vote on insulin. It all just gets bundled up and people don't really spend a lot of time. So that's why I think that we spent as much time on it this morning. I think it's important for people to understand this.
Yeah, I do too. I do as well. And it is a sad state of affairs. I mean, let's just be really clear. Americans are getting price gouged on insulin. The amount of markup is absolutely grotesque. It is more than 4 times what any other country, OECD country in the world is paying for insulin. You see at the bottom, the US, almost $100. Every other, that line at the beginning, that's $25. Every other OECD country, price of insulin per unit, all of them are below 25, and many of them are significantly below 25, more at like the $10 mark, and we're paying freaking $100 per unit. Like, it truly is grotesque. It is not expensive to manufacture. One thing I want us to talk about on another day is what Gavin Newsom in California is doing, which is very interesting, is saying, hey, we're going to, as the state of California, we're going to manufacture our own insulin so that we're not subject to that, which I think is a very interesting direction, something that the left is looking at pushing for more and more, in addition to like Medicare for all. Why don't we also have direct, you know, public manufacturing of some of these generic drugs to compete with and to try to wring out some of this massive price gouging from the pharmaceutical industry. So
it really just doesn't make any sense.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.